The Sloan Consortium also, for those of you who are not from here, it was started by Frank Midas at the Sloan Foundation as part of his asynchronous learning initiative, which started probably almost 20 years ago. And they were the first to really start to build the theory and practice and best practice collections for asynchronous learning and now for blended learning. They do the annual survey of adoption across U.S. institutions, a survey of like provosts, senior academic officers. They've done more than any other group, I think, to really move things forward and accelerate the adoption in the U.S. of online learning. And what's the latest figure of adoption for online learning?
We're at just under 1/3 of all students during 2011 took at least one online course, so the penetration is up. The increase was the lowest it has been in 10 years, but it was the rest of higher education was actually down, so they can blame us in terms of absolutely correct.
All right, so now the session right now is about MOOCs, and this also features Gwyn, our senior instructional designer for MSUglobal. One reason we decided to talk about this is because it's such a hot topic, and it's kind of interesting. It's an interesting notion. In what ways would massive open online courses, how could they be used as a tool? Where would they be appropriate to use? What problems do they actually solve in the context of agriculture development, especially in developing countries? Is it just a U.S. thing, a lead institution thing? What is it? And so it's interesting to think of it as a tool that may actually open up some ideas. So I think it's a good dialogue opener. So there's not, as far as I know, there's not a whole lot going on in agriculture development with MOOCs. It's sort of an idea. We heard from some people from the OU UK, I think, were talking about it. We did a metropolitan agriculture one, Gwyn will share. There's some things kind of bubbling up, and there's interest. People are curious about it. So that's why we're covering it today. So, Gwyn, do you want this?
Thank you, Chris. Okay, to begin with, as Chris defined this for us, some of you may be familiar with MOOCs, some of you may not. So it's a massively open online course, and to start out with a little bit of introduction, we're going to listen to a short video clip from David Cormier, who is he's from the University of Prince Edward Island, and he was one of the pioneers of the MOOC movement. So he actually was one of the people that helped coin the phrase MOOC, and which is kind of fun acronym that I came up with. And in 2008, he offered one of the first MOOC courses, and that course was on connectivism and connective knowledge. So let me show you this video really quick.
The massive open online course is a response to the challenges faced by organizations and distributed disciplines in a time of information overload. It used to be that when you wanted to know about something, you could do a few things. You could ask someone, you could buy a book, you could try to figure it out for yourself, or you could call a school. If that school offered the course and the thing you were trying to figure out, you could go there and take it. You could get access to information about a topic. An instructor would comb through journals and books to pull the information together from a library. You might even find others who are also interested in the same things that you are. The MOOC is built for a world where information is everywhere, where a social network obsessed with the same thing that you are is a click away, a digital world. A world where an internet connection gives you access to a staggering amount of information. This video will introduce you to how a massive open online course is one way of learning in a networked world. A MOOC is a course, it's open, it's participatory, it's distributed, and it supports lifelong networked learning. In one sense, a massive open online course is just that. It's a course. It has facilitators and course materials, it has a start and an end date, it has participants. But a MOOC is not a school. It's not just an online course. It's a way to connect and collaborate while developing digital skills. It's a way of engaging in the learning process that engages what it means to be a student. It is, maybe most importantly, an event around which people who care about a topic can get together and work and talk about it in a structured way. The course is open. All of the work gets done in areas accessible for people to read and reflect and comment on. The course is open in the sense that you can go ahead and take the course without paying for it. You might pay to get the credit through an institution, but you're not paying for participating in the course. It's also open in the sense that the work done in the course is shared between all the people taking it. The material put together by the facilitators, the work done by the participants, It's all negotiated in the open. You get to keep your work, and everybody else gets to learn from it. The course is participatory. You really become part of the course by engaging with other people's work. Participants are not asked to complete specific assignments, but rather to engage with the material with each other and with other material they may find on the web. You make connections between ideas and between you and other people. You network. One of the outcomes that people get from the course are the network connections they've built up through engaging with each other. The course is distributed, and all these blogs
Okay, so that's just kind of an overview. Didn't go through the whole video clip. If you want to see more of it, of course, it's up on YouTube. You just search by MOOC, and it's pretty much one of the first things that comes up. But in summary, after listening to what Dave said in his video, so what is an open online course? Now, this is going to vary. So Dave was describing one type of MOOC, but two things are pretty much always in common with these courses. One is that it's open access, okay? And that means that it's open to anyone interested in that specific topic. You don't have to be a student at a university if a university is hosting it, or you don't have to be a person within an organization if they're hosting it. It is open access, okay? And then the other thing that typically is similar for all MOOCs is that it's for the masses, so it's for the large scale. Now, this is going to vary. Large scale, how you're going to define that is going to vary on your audience and, you know, the specific topic that you're teaching and so forth. But those are two things that are pretty much always in common. Now, the next item on the slide here, I probably should have reworded it a little bit. So the content itself is open. Now, this is going to vary a little bit, okay? So, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more as I get through my presentation. But originally, it was intended by a lot of people that were creating MOOCs that the content was openly licensed and so forth with a Creative Commons license, allowing people to basically, let's say that I was an instructor and I put my PowerPoint out there in my MOOC course. Maybe I put an attribution license on it. Anyone here in the room, anyone here on the world that was in the course would be able to download it, reuse it for their own purpose, as long as they gave me attribution that that was mine from Michigan State. Okay, and there's different licenses. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with this as well. And we have experts here in the field of OER as well. Now, some other courses that, especially more recently that have come out, content is not necessarily put out there with an OER license. Okay, you can still openly access it, but it doesn't have that license on it. Okay. Also, a really important aspect of MOOCs is that it's connecting experts and learners. Okay, so this is something that's very powerful because let's say anyone out there could take a course on computer science from Harvard. Many people may think that that could never happen, right? Or taking a course from MIT, or taking a course on artificial intelligence from Stanford, or taking a course on agriculture from Michigan State University. You know, they just may think that it's totally out of their reach. However, through a massively open online course, they can access that content, okay? Also, sometimes when people go through a MOOC course, they may be able to get a certificate of completion and things like that. I'll talk more about that in just a moment. Okay, so let's kind of go back a little bit again to what Dave was talking about in his video clip in terms of kind of the original learning design for MOOCs. Okay, so it kind of was changing things from the expert to novice paradigm. Okay, instead what they were talking about was creating a community of people, creating a network of people who are interested in the same thing. Okay, building that together. And you know, we can really think about this in terms of being learning theory, in terms of being connectivism. Okay, and using a lot of social media, for example, using blogs within the course, or using peer feedback, and you know, kind of innovative ways of creatively thinking of how you're going to connect these learners together. Some of the more recent MOOCs kind of follow a different paradigm in terms of more of a behaviorist approach, to where people are watching lectures, you know, maybe a lot of talking heads or and so forth with kind of a PowerPoint and so forth, and then auto-graded assignments. So something to where, let's say, for example, you have to get 75% or higher on all the quizzes in order to get your certificate of completion or something like that. Also, we can look at MOOCs in terms of a constructivist approach, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the theorist Malcolm Knowles for this. He was a theorist that focused on adult learning, and some of the things that he said were, for example, that adult learners, they're self-directed, they're people that are ready to learn, and probably the thing that's kind of the most important is they like to bring experiences to their learning. And if you're talking about a MOOC that's really talked about being creative or connecting people and building this community, that's really what people are doing within these MOOCs. Of course, this aligns right in with it being part of lifelong learning. And in the original learning design intents of a lot of the pioneers, such as Dave and so forth, they were focusing on the OER. Okay, so now a little bit about our participants. Who are these people that are taking the MOOCs? And as I said before, all MOOCs are pretty much open access, okay? And students can register and attend at their own convenience. Now, the masses of people, okay, in a lot of these courses, let's say they have 100,000 participants in them. Many of these students may be what kind of is termed lurkers. Some people think that's kind of a funny term, but for example, though, I will say I myself am a lurker in several courses. For example, I've enrolled in several courses through a platform called Coursera. Part of my background is instructional design, and as we're developing MOOCs here on campus, I want to see what other people are doing. So I'm not really looking to get a certificate. I'm just enrolling in courses that are kind of maybe similar to things that we may be offering. So got a screenshot up here of one course I enrolled in equine nutrition, because we do a lot here with the animal science department, and also some on nutrition, because we possibly may be doing some in the area of food safety, and that was about the closest I could find. And so you're going to have a lot of people that enroll in the courses. Now, some of these people, and you can kind of think of it as a funnel, you're going to have a lot of people enrolled. Then some people are going to want that certificate of completion. So they're actually going to go through all the required assignments and so forth, and they're going to want that certificate. Okay, but it's going to be a lot lower number, obviously, than the people that enrolled in it, which is okay. And some people are going to want that certificate. Some people are going to want possibly credit for it if it's offered, maybe a lifelong learning type credit if that's available from the university or something like that. Okay. Now, sometimes this can affect, of course, whether or not that MOOC is free. So if you want that additional add-on, you may have to pay a small cost. So why do these students like to take these courses? What's in it for them, right? So first of all, lifelong learners, people that are just simply interested in that topic and want to learn more about it. Other people, maybe they want that certificate. Maybe it applies to their job or something that they do along those lines. Other people, the people out there that are really into social media and so forth, they may want a badge. Maybe they can get a badge for it or things like that. Okay, and one example, actually, I'm going to missed it in my last slide, but Khan Academy is one example that I think is kind of a fun one to tell. So, and there's a great story. So it started out by a gentleman by the name of Sal Khan, and he was working full-time and so forth, and he had a cousin that wanted to be tutored in math. Okay, so what he started to do is he started to put these short video clips up online describing how to do different math concepts. Well, they kind of went viral on YouTube, and he got some funding and so forth, and currently he has a lot of funding through the Gates Foundation, and he's created this massive site. They have over 4,000 video clips on everything from math to humanities and science, and there's also resources on here. So there's a corner for coaches and teachers. There's an area on there for parents, okay, if you want to get in there and help your kids. And then they've made it fun for the kids to go through the curriculum as well. So they go through the video clips, they can track their process throughout the system. They can get online badges that they can put on Facebook and things like that. And so it's really grown, and it's kind of a fun site to go to, and it's good especially if you have kids. Okay. Next, faculty participation. Okay, so first thing I'm going to talk about here is star power. Okay, so when you look for who's going to be instructing your MOOC that you're going to put together, you want to think about, who are going to attract people to your course. And so these are instructors for a course we offered on metropolitan agriculture. And the two people at the top, they're both consultants from the Netherlands, from an organization, well, they used to work for an organization called Transforum. Dr. Henk van Lettestein and Sander Mager. And they brought tremendous stories to the course, along with Dr. Chris Peterson, who's a professor here and the director of the Product Center here on campus. All three of them. Each week we had weekly webinars in it, and they told stories. They explained how people are doing these phenomenal things in the area of metropolitan agriculture, and were very inspiring. Okay, and they had a lot of networks. Okay, so they knew a lot of people. They knew people to invite to be part of the MOOC, which really helped as well. Okay, so that's going to help get your mass, your larger numbers. Now, one thing you definitely have to remember for your faculty in order to help keep their sanity is you have to give them support. Okay, let's say that these courses where they've got 100,000 students in it, and maybe they've got 5,000 that are really active and doing a lot of the assignments and so forth. You got to think about how you're going to help them out, because you can't expect that one or two faculty members to take care of all of those participants. So you're going to think about, are you going to have graders to help them out? Are you going to have tutors to help them out, or people to help manage discussions and things like that? Okay, if you put it all on them, they're going to get frustrated and never going to want to do it again. And then you also, from an instructional design standpoint, you have to think about your infrastructure and the experience for the participants, okay? So how is the content going to be put out there? Are you going to have video clips? Are you going to have cartoons? Are you going to have checkpoints within your video clips where they have to do specific things? How are you going to apply their knowledge and what they're learning? You're going to have discussion forums, blogs, peer-reviewed papers, okay? There's projects. There's many different ways to do it. And just a few things about actually setting up a MOOC. So one thing you just need to think about is the technologies along with it. And there's many different platforms out there. Some people you may have heard of platforms such as MOOC or edX or things like this. And these, they have the content's kind of very similar than what you're going to see within the courses. Like the few courses I'm enrolled in Coursera, they're quite similar, and how they're structured and so forth. And or you can kind of go another way, like what we did with our Metropolitan Agriculture course, is we simply used a WordPress site. Okay, so we made it a little bit flexible. We wanted our content, it was all openly licensed, and we wanted to make it available to people. So there are the bigger platforms to use, but you can't not look at other things as well. So like the WordPress, we're looking into Drupal for some of our future MOOCs. And so, and this also lends us back to kind of the original intent, you might say, of MOOCs. And so looking for that connectivism and looking for that community in the network and things like that. Now you also, some things you just have to, basic things you have to think about in terms of registration, timing. How long is your MOOC going to last? 4 weeks? 6 weeks? It's really up to you and what's the best thing for your content. So there's no written rule of how long it needs to be. You also have to think of your technical support, okay? You can't have the instructor getting emails from students saying, I can't log in, I can't play this video clip, something like that. Got to have some people to help them with that. Also, very, very important thing is marketing, okay? That is one thing that platforms such as Coursera and edX have. They have a lot of eyeballs. So they have a lot of people that are looking at those courses. Now, so that, for example, when we did our Metro Ag course, we had to come up with our own marketing list to go towards. Okay, so that's one thing to definitely think about. Who are you going to market this to? And we used for that one, I'm actually going to talk about it here in just a minute. So next, I'm going to talk about MOOCs Spartan style. Okay, probably should have had the MSU fight song playing right now or something. But as I mentioned, we did a MOOC, and this was, let's see, we did it last spring, and on metropolitan agriculture. And part of the reason why we did it was because metropolitan agriculture is emerging discipline here at MSU. And, we wanted to kind of explore this area and so forth and kind of get the movement started, okay? So we created a 6-week online course, and it was all, as I mentioned before, openly licensed content. And each week what we had for our structure was we had a weekly webinar from one of the experts I had introduced earlier. They had weekly readings, and there was actually a book that 2 of them had written that people got access to within the course. We had discussion forums and resources and links and things, but probably one of the neatest things I think that came up within this course is we did something that we called an innovation project. Okay, so in the very first week, we asked people to either identify a topic within metropolitan agriculture that they wanted to implement or possibly were currently implementing. Okay, so that was week 1. Then from there, based on the webinars for each week, they basically kind of started to write together a plan of implementation or of how they would change their plan. Okay, so by the end, they actually had a real good story to tell, a really good case example. Okay, and we've also used these examples as well for other things in helping to promote a metropolitan agriculture field here at MSU. And it also inspired us to basically not end the MOOC at the end of 6 weeks. So what we did was we kept going with a webinar series. And how we started out with the webinar series, we actually highlighted some of the really good stories or case studies that came out of there. And so the webinar was basically the person introduced their topic to everyone, and then our experts gave comments to them and gave them feedback and gave them direction on it. So it was wonderful. The people that were doing the case studies and planning the projects, they loved giving the feedback. You know, I mean, they were getting free feedback from an expert, and these case studies were from all over the country, or all over the world. Okay, and so that was a really neat part of the project. Now, another MOOC that we have coming out in May of 2013 is the Foundations of Science MOOC, and this one is definitely going to be fun. So I would encourage all of you to check it out. And this one is basically it is meant to be like critical thinking and making people think about different aspects of science and so forth, and really think about what their viewpoints are and things like that in terms of topics relating to science. So definitely it's going to be a good one. And they're going to use a lot of cartoons. They're working with our area here on campus called LearnDat to develop a lot of interactive things for the participants. So it's not going to be just a talking head type of MOOC. It's going to be very interactive. And along with this, kind of as well, talk about the research component as well within this grant. And I should say they have funding for this through a challenge grant through the Gates Foundation. And so not only do they want to just have this MOOC, but they've got a specific person that's going to be focusing simply on research and data and how it's affecting people, how they're using the content, and things like that. Now, some other future Spartan MOOCs. Okay, I already mentioned the science one. We've been talking with people about doing one on food safety. And we also have been talking about food fraud. We've got John Spink here in the audience, and that's his MOOC. We also have gender and agriculture we're hoping to do, and one also with a writing area. And these are just some. There's many, many others that people are talking about here on campus. And so MSUglobal, we're a partner in leading this cooperative with many other people and departments across campus, and we just want to help the faculty and help implement the technology as best we can. So that is the end of my part of the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Bruce.
Thank you, Gwyn. So I stand before you, but between you and the reception and dinner. How about that? So you want to talk about a challenge. It's great to be with you. Thank you so much for the invitation to join you today. Chris, I appreciate your remarks so that people had a little bit of sense of who's this outsider from this organization called Sloan C. Some of you may know about it. Insider, and I'm going to actually end. There are two things I want to do. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the dynamics that are changing kind of our industry, if you will, of higher education. And then comment a little bit about, so you get a little bit of a marketing pitch, if you will, about the Sloan Consortium. So I'll apologize at the front end about that, but it's really good stuff. It's a good organization. I want to make a quick comment about MOOCs, because they, whether we wanted this or not, it is really having a huge impact on the kind of the landscape of higher education, and is having most of us at either institutional or organizational level are having a lot of discussions about where we are headed, in part because of the MOOCs. Now, I could make several comments, but I need to turn to this. I would make one quick comment about MOOCs. If they had not been called courses, we might have had a far better chance of getting out of the thicket here, because almost immediately when you put course after something, and we call these courses, the academic community said, well, if they're courses, they have to have carry credit. And Gwyn did a nice job of laying out the credit arrangement here. These are more learning vignettes. I think the Khan Academy strategy is in fact what was pushing this whole MOOC movement. And if you talk to many of the folks who are involved with this, they're saying, yeah, they're kind of mini courses. They're elements of courses. And what's happened over the history of these things now, which is what, a couple of years old, is they've really started to take on course-like qualities. And so you had all of these institutions racing out to say, we got to join edX, we got to join Coursera, we got to join Udacity to create courses for that are MOOCs. And our students are going to start knocking on our door asking for credit, so we've got to come up with credit strategies. I think we pushed the gas pedal far too quickly and down too far on MOOCs. The reality is we're going at a high speed with these things. They will change. During our group session, and then I'm actually going to get to my presentation, during our table 2, there's a great table over here in the exercise that earlier, and it made it up there. I think one of the things that you should be looking at is a MOOC strategy. But I want to take it back to the traditions of MOOCs, which are vignettes of courses that are laid out there, that are made available, that are massive, that are open, that in fact are learning experiences. So if you thought about these instead of MOOCs as learning experiences, bits and pieces of courses that could help in the agricultural community worldwide, that's the mindset that I'm thinking about with respect to MOOCs. Okay, so I'm not a slide reader, but a quick. So this is for all of us who are at the Michigan States, and I was at Virginia Tech for 15 years. These great, marvelous universities, and here is a prediction that we're going to be gone in 10 to 15 years. The model that we have deployed in the U.S. will be not viable in 10 to 15 years. Well, there's some good news and bad news about this. The good news is this was done by Ernst & Young, a U.S. organization, and they were talking about and done a study on Australia. I don't know how many of you have seen this report. If you haven't, it's easily downloadable. Quick read, great report. A 1,000-year-old industry on the cusp of profound change was part of the title, University of the Future. Part of my argument is Australia's higher education system looks a heck of a lot like the U.S. higher education system. Only ours is just much bigger. I mean, it is just dramatically much bigger. But most of our institutions look like the MSUs and the Virginia Techs and the Florida States, and I could go down the list of particularly land-grant institutions. We're all doing things in a very similar fashion. And so this MOOC phenomena has really started to change the dynamic, in several ways. And these are the five trends that are driving these changes. Many of which were, in fact, part of the conversation at the table study, which I found very interesting. This notion of democratization, open knowledge, get access to the knowledge, open it up. Part of our problem has been, and I thought the little cartoon that you did, Gwyn, was interesting, because we are open. Just you got to pay a lot of money to get to our openness, if you will, and that's a problem. And in fact, part of the problem is the markets, the contestability of markets in higher education are changing dramatically. And if institutions are not becoming more sensitive to who is in their market and who they're after, it is problematic. Our funding mechanisms, particularly for the public sector of higher education, have gone off the charts. Off the charts. I don't know, only a few states that I'm aware of over the last few years that have increased support for public higher education. Most of them have decreased it, and they've essentially said to, in this kind of no tax increase environment in the U.S., well, we're not going to tax you, but institutions, if you want to raise tuition and fees, go ahead and raise tuition and fees. And so we've outpriced the market. And when I was a pup in this business, that was many years ago, the notion was this is an inelastic market. Basic economics here, don't worry about it, we'll stretch it. But keep in mind that for many, many years, the model in the U.S. was the family paid a third, the state paid a third, and financial aid paid a third, and it all worked. We haven't been that way in 25 years. Digital technology is changing the world. I'm going to get to that because that's really kind of my shtick, if you will. The global mobility, and it plays out in markets and because of that technology. And I think it's fascinating for the work that you're doing in MSUglobal and in the AgSet activity. So I'm going to make just a couple of comments about MOOCs. I'm going to not hold you from those drinks because I'm going to be able to enjoy one with you. All of this is about outreach. All of this discussion ultimately becomes part of kind of this outreach mission. So a good friend of mine and a former board member of the Sloan Consortium, Gary Miller, director emeritus of this little place called Penn State and its world campus, had a piece out just in the last couple of months, and I picked up on it and had a little conversation with Gary, and he advanced in this new environment the kind of the land grant mission, if you will. 5 points. I darkened 4 of them. I'm going to stay away from revitalizing general education, except to say this: the model for general education is changing to straighter line. Why pay hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to take a gen ed course when I can go to a place called Straighter Line and enroll in a course and pay a flat fee and get credit for it? It doesn't get transcripted. Well, it gets transcripted. It just doesn't get transcripted as credit. It gets transcripted as a recommendation for credit that you can then kind of turn into credit. So the reality is that even at the gen ed area, this is changing. But the impact of the MOOC movement, if you will, or this phenomena or paranoia, you can pick any one of those terms because it's been either underscored in a positive or not so positive way in the media, in particular in higher education. The impact on research and technology, exactly what you folks are talking about. So think about this kind of MOOC-like activity in the work that you're doing. The notion of cooperative extension, which has been a huge deal in ag development in this country, changes because of the MOOC environment once again. Our continuing education and outreach efforts are changing very dramatically to the point where many of our continuing education operations are now kind of cost centers on their own and are asked to go out and find students and meet their own cost situation. Institutional collaboration clearly is a key for what you're doing, and I think part of this kind of MOOC phenomena, if you will, or MOOC philosophy or strategy, is one that in fact you can have play out here. So I really do think this is a time for action. And you're engaged in that, but many institutions are not, and they're kind of scratching their heads in the U.S. thinking, how are we going to do this? Part of the driver for this is it's massive, it's open, it's online, and it's free. It is drawing. Sebastian Thrun's course, the initial course in artificial intelligence, drew 150,000 students. Made the cover of Time magazine. It made the cover of Time magazine as this is online learning. And what I'm here to say in part is it's not really good online learning. It's a good way to deliver stuff, but it's not online learning because most of us who have been involved with online learning say, well, one of the key features is you need to interact. You need to have students interacting with students and students interacting with faculty and faculty with students. Now you can do that even with large classes, but as Gwyn said, one of the tenets of the MOOC is you don't ask questions. You kind of can create your own communities, and there's some kind of neat aspects about that. But we don't believe that it is necessarily the best way to say this is a quality online instructional activity. The reality we have to deal with is this is a two-edged sword. I could not pay I could not pay the cost of the cover of Time magazine talking about online learning. So that's the sharp positive edge of that sword. The other side of that sword is people are saying, well, MOOCs are quality online learning. And when you talk to Sebastian Thrun about his course, he'll say, of the 150,000 who enrolled, 4,000 or 5,000 finished. Now, take that percentage of students and put it in any traditional classroom or any good online course, and we would say, what are you doing? That's crazy. You can't do that. It's an experiment, and I think we need to kind of keep that in focus as we move forward. It has great potential. I completely agree with Gwyn, and I'm really intrigued by the kinds of things that MSU is doing, MSUglobal. I think it really can have, for your ag share model, I called it ag sat earlier, sorry about that, ag share model, low cost, high impact. You can do this in a low cost, high impact way, and you in fact can serve a global market. I love the notion of creating just-in-time learning. So if you're reaching those in agriculture who have some need to learn something and apply it almost immediately, this has the potential to do that. And you can do it in fines. You can take the Khan Academy approach and really make this work. And I think it really does open new channels for cooperation and research. So that leaves me just a couple of minutes to do a little promotion here. Sloan Consortium. I don't know why professional society. There's a gremlin in the font. We're a nonprofit organization. As Chris said, we were launched about 20 years ago. We carry the name Sloan because of the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, our benefactor, if you will. It was launched by Frank Mayados, as was commented on. It started out as a group of grantees in this anytime, anyplace learning environment from the foundation, getting together, kind of meeting like this, and there were 5 of them, and then 10, and then 15, or 20, and then 40. And they said, well, we got to have a conference. And 20 years later, we are holding big conferences and do several things. We've created a community. There is a sense of community. What are we about? We're about trying to mainstream online learning, and we look at what has happened over a 20-year period of time, and the reality is it's mainstream. In fact, you can make an argument that traditional students, 18-year-olds who go off to a campus and study full-time at one institution for 8 semesters and get a degree, are in the vast minority of students who are now participating in higher education in the U.S. Now, not all of them are participating in online learning yet, but hold on, they'll get there. We are heavy into professional development. So if your institutions, your organizations are involved with the development of faculty, we are really about our bread and butter, if you will, is really about helping you help develop your faculty to teach online. Maybe in MOOCs, but we think there are better techniques and strategies that can be used. We operate on membership fees, institutional, individual. We do workshops, 3 major conferences a year. Karen is heavily involved in one coming up here shortly on emerging technologies, and we appreciate her work. A little collage slide here. I'm not going to talk about all of these. And there's a sigh of relief from the crowd. That's good. But just to give you the sense of some of the things that we're doing. We do have a professional journal, JALN, Journal of Asynchronous Learning Networks. That's why we call it JALN now. Referee Journal, there's work going on. There was a meeting just yesterday on a publication that Karen and Chris and others are working on in this area, and we're really excited about the work that goes on there. We do an annual survey each year that gets a lot of publicity. Much of our work is tied to quality and quality assurance. Many of you have heard of Quality Matters, which is a course assessment tool. We have a companion to that, which is called our Quality Scorecard, which looks at evaluating programs and or institutional programmatic activities that are online. There's a nice tool in there you can do online and do some comparative analyses. Series of publications. As I mentioned, we have 3 major conferences, and I would also point out that we believe, some of us are getting a little bit long in the tooth, not this audience, me, I'm talking about me, that the next cadre of leaders in online learning, but in particular online learning, are going to be very different from most of us. Most of us have come up through the ranks. We were faculty members. Some of us went to the dark side, to the administration, moved into organizations or agencies or what have you. Many of the young people who are now coming into online learning and into leadership positions are coming at it directly out of their graduate programming and directly into online learning. There is a change afoot here. So we have developed a leadership program that is now entering its 5th year with our friends at the World Campus at Penn State, so up in the upper right-hand corner, at least on my screen, on your screen as well, called the Institute for Emerging Leadership in Online Learning. We bring about 40 people together, do online, kind of a blended format, a week in lovely State College. And you want to talk about a sense of community, 140 graduates of that program so far. And I'm guessing about 120 of them are heavily engaged in activities on an ongoing basis. So I'm going to end with what I call a perfect storm. I've been on the job for just about a year now. I was on the board prior to that, so it's not as if I've been kind of this foreigner wandering into the midst of Sloan C. But the organization never had a strategic plan. So guess what, folks? We now have a strategic plan, and one tenet of kind of 6 major areas within that strategic plan. 2 of them I'll mention. One is international programming. I've always been struck as I've moved around the world that people know more about Sloan C, Sloan Consortium, than oftentimes people in the U.S. do. I think that's a credit more to the international community than it probably is to the U.S. community. And secondly, we're really moving headstrong into a much greater focus on collaboration. So my sense is that the kinds of work that you're doing and the kinds of work that's been laid out on the charts and in the discussions today, and some of the work that we're doing, particularly as it relates to online learning, has some real potential and real opportunities for us. Happy to do that. We have created communities around topics or issues called special interest groups, or SIGs, and we are encouraging, and I think we've got a grand opportunity with Chris and Karen and some of you in the room to develop a SIG within our frame of activities. And so we would encourage that, and we will be happy to do whatever we can do for you and with you in that way. And the other topic was, yes. So here I am talking to people who are into OER. I go out on the road and I talk to colleagues in other organizations internationally, and they would say, geez, this journal is great, and people, but what's the deal? You're out espousing open education resources, and your journal is held behind a wall for 6 months, which was true. And the strategy was that we'll get your membership, we'll open up this to you immediately. If not, then you've got to wait 6 months to get access to journal articles. So I asked a simple question, and the simple question was, the policy's been in effect 4 years. And I should add, and we said, okay, if you want the article now, you'll pay a fee. You can download it for whatever it was, but not a huge, $5. It was not a huge fee. So I asked the question of the staff, how much money did we generate last year from the downloads of the journal articles? And the response came back, $1,400. And I said, $1,400, and they said, yes, $1,400 for 4 years, not last year, for 4 years. And I said, now let me make sure. So we've locked away really good stuff for $1,400. We're going to remove it. So with the stroke of a pen, the power of the position, I said, we're not going to do it anymore, effective January the 1st. We had a board meeting, I'll finish up with this. We had a board meeting on January the 7th, and I made an announcement to the board that we've removed it, and there was a verbal outcry that was so positive. I said, now's the time to go out. Whatever I wanted to get from the board, it was the time to do it. Very simple thing. But I can stand in front of you and say, we are in fact not only espousing open education resources, we're actually doing it with our resources, so with the journal. So let me end there. Thank you again for the invitation and the time. Great presentation by Gwyn to follow up. Think a bit more about MOOCs, kind of soften the C, maybe don't capitalize it. Think about these as learning experiences, and think about how your community can be helped through the development of MOOCs. And in fact, Table 2 suggested that, so it's probably not a bad suggestion. So thank you very much. Look forward to chatting with you later on.
Thank you, Bruce.